Well, I've got hold of these new person and dog molds. I've got one that's a man and a dog and another one that's a lady and a dog. Thank you, Cynthia, for sending me this one. It's really appreciated because I couldn't get this one in the UK. So one of my members sent it to me from America. And there are a lot of things on Amazon that you can actually get, even if they're only in America. You can order them and they will send them to the UK or in other countries. Unfortunately, this wasn't one of them. So thank you, Cynthia. One of my members has also made these and they look amazing. So I'm going to have a go today. And this one I'm going to do slightly different to this one because I think this one looks a little bit like a Dalmatian to me. So I'm going to make it look a bit Dalmatian-fied. So I'm going to use ResinCrete for these. I think they're going to look brilliant in ResinCrete. I'm going to be using 30-minute full curing one because it just gives you a little bit more time to work. Don't forget, whenever you're using ResinCrete, to mix it up as a 10-3. So for example, 100 of the powder to 30 of the water. Now I'm not going to need much to start with, so I'm only going to mix up 25. There we go. So I only need 7.5 of the water. I put it in a smaller pot to do that with because if not, what will happen is I'll end up pouring tons in there. And what I'm going to use is, as always, fork now because it just mixes it without any lumps in it whatsoever. And now I also want to put some colour in it, and that is the black. I'm going to be using the black for this. Obviously, it has black spots. This is when you can move over to a stick. Make sure you give it a good mix in because if not, you won't get the colour you want. It will be streaky. And now I'm going to put my black ResinCrete into here and make little dots with it. I'm making sure that I go not only up the sides with it, because obviously I want black dots everywhere, but also on the base. I'm trying to smooth them out a little bit as well. So there we go, that's enough dots in there now. And what I'm going to do is leave that to dry before I do anything else. So this is a piece of advice for you. If when you put ResinCrete on a mold like this, or actually if you've got resin on it or anything, and you try and move it and you knock it, then you're going to dislodge the actual seal from the ResinCrete to the mold, and as a result, you're not going to have those dots on there. So they're just going to drop off. But if you wet them and then push them back on, they should stick on there again and dry on there. So there we go. Now this is nearly dry. Now a lot of people ask me, what is the difference between ResinCrete and Plaster of Paris? I don't actually have any Plaster of Paris in my studio at the moment. If I did have, I would show you and do a comparison video. But I have actually done one of them about 2 or 3 years ago. And I'll link that at the end of this video here for you to check out. And you can actually really see the difference. But overall, I'm not slagging Plaster of Paris off, because it really does have its place and people do like it. But there is a big difference between the two. Massive difference. ResinCrete definitely has a whiter finish to it, which you'll see at the end of this video because I'm going to leave parts of these actually white, and it really does have a white finish to it. ResinCrete is much stronger than Plaster of Paris. It's far more dense, and as a result, it gives you a really, really good quality, firm finish when it's cured. The other thing is the curing process is much more consistent with ResinCrete, so you get a more consistent finish and you don't get nowhere near as many trap bubbles as you do when using Plaster of Paris. It also takes colour much better, both in the mixing stage when you're using pigments to colour things up and at the painting stage. Because it's so much more denser, when you're painting it with the acrylic paints, you get a much smoother finish than you would with Plaster of Paris. Much more professional. It is so much more heat resistant. So if you're making tea lights or things like that, that you're going to put little candles in, then you are going to have a much more heat resistant product. I love it because I find it so easy to mix. I don't get it all lumpy. It doesn't cure up really quickly or go really thick. And it doesn't produce lots of bubbles. So that's my differences. But please check out the video that I've got coming up at the end of this one. It'll be linked up here because that will really go through a comparison I did when I very first was introduced to ResinCrete. Well, now I'm ready to pour my last coat in of ResinCrete. Now, some of these areas are quite detailed and quite thin. So what I will be doing is reinforcing those, and I'm going to show you how I do that as well. In a way, this is a bit like putting rebar in concrete. You want to be able to reinforce it so none of these little bits snap. Now, I've got this flat wire that I love using for this sort of thing. But if you haven't got any of this, then just thickish wire like that will do. And all I'm going to do is put a bit here like that. So that will go in there. I'll mold it to the shape that I want. There we go. So that's the shape that I want. Yep, that'll fit in there fine. I'm not putting it in yet because I don't need to put it in yet. Got a bit there. I'm also going to put a bit here as well, where the foot is. Yep, so that's that bit there. That bit there. And I think everywhere else should be okay. This is a really soft mold. So on that one, I think everything's going to be fine. And the next bits that are really quite delicate is that bit there. I'm going to put one there and I'm going to put a little bit in its leg as well. So a bit there, yeah, and a bit there. And that should be enough for me. So I'm going to mix up my ResinCrete now exactly the same way as I did in the previous one where I did the black dots. So I've got my ResinCrete mixed up, and now what I'm going to do is pour this in slowly to try and avoid any trap bubbles, because on this one I'm not going to be able to do any squidgy widgy because I don't want to dislodge those black dots. And I'm going to pour it right up to the top, and the same for the person. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this for about 2 or 3 minutes just to thicken up a little bit before I put my rebar in. Well, they've had about 4 minutes now. So what I'm going to do is just pop this in now and push it down towards, I think, what is roughly the middle. And then any lumps on there, I can just tap them slightly and they'll disappear. And the same for this one. If you put it in straight away, then you risk it falling right the way down to the bottom, and you don't want that. You want it to be virtually in the middle. And you can use this technique for all sorts of delicate work using ResinCrete or Plaster of Paris or any of the ones that you use. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up some more ResinCrete now and put the bits in here, and then we'll leave it to cure. Well, these are all poured now, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave them curing in the mould for at least an hour because of these delicate little bits. If it was a big mould, then I wouldn't bother. I had a little bit left over and I poured it into my homemade shell moulds that I made with the brush-on silicone. And once these have been curing for 30 minutes, I'll just demould them. But these, because they've got delicate bits, I will leave it about an hour, and then I can let them dry. So they're cured enough now. They've been curing for about an hour, so I can take them out of the mould. But when you take them out of the mould, be sure to do it delicately because they will still be a little bit damp, because we need to now let them fully dry before we do anything else with them. So gently does it when there's a delicate as this. There we go. That's out in full. Look, he's so cute. So we've got that out in one piece. And as you can see, none of the metal work can be seen in here at all. And that is because we allowed it to sit for a few minutes before we put it in. So it hasn't sunk all the way down. Like I said, this one is a lot softer, so it's going to come out a lot easier. And there's my little Dalmatian. Oh, he has come out cute. And as you can see, none of that metal has shown on either of these on either side. These are the ones I did with my leftover ResinCrete. Look at that, come out beautiful. You don't have to worry so much about larger pieces, and I'll use them in something later. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put these in my curing box for probably about 2 to 3 hours to ensure that they're fully dry all the way through. If you haven't got a curing box, put them somewhere warm and leave them for 2 or 3 days, and that way you let it cure up completely. And then once they're fully dry, I'll show you what makes these the cutest little molds in the world. These are completely dry now, and if I wanted to varnish them or paint them, then they would be no problem to do that because I left them in my curing box for 2.5 hours. So they're lovely and dry. And now let me show you the magic bit of this. So what happens is, look at that. Oh, I just think that is the cutest thing ever in the world. I love it. I absolutely love it. And they both do it. So we've got that one. So you can have them together like that. And this one with the little girl and the dog, you can also put them together. I don't think this is such a well thought out, simple, but well thought out mold. I really love it. It is so cute. And adding the metal brace in there, that rebar really makes a big difference as well. It allows you to be confident that these little thin bits aren't going to break. I'm really pleased with that. I think I'm going to have a lot of fun with this mould, and I'm sure it's going to be very popular as well at craft fairs and things like that. Be sure to check out the one that's coming up now on the screen. That'll be the one where I made a comparison between Plaster of Paris and ResinCrete. Don't miss it. Honestly, you'll really find it very, very useful. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, but most of all, enjoy your resin. Take care. Bye.